Welcome back to the podcast. You are listening to Let It Out with me. I'm your host, Katie Dalebout. And on this week's episode, I have a long-form conversation with someone named Jenna. She's the Pilates unicorn on Instagram. We connected over the internet. I got into Pilates a couple years ago. My best friend in Michigan became a Pilates teacher, and I was teaching yoga at the time, and yoga was really the only type of exercise I'd ever done and liked. But I talked about this in the last episode where I had a Pilates teacher on, which was the only other time I've had a Pilates teacher on, with Anula, who owns a studio in my neighborhood here in the East Village that I love called 6th Street Pilates, and we'll link to that one in the show notes. But anyway, I found Pilates because I'm hypermobile, so I need more strengthening, and Pilates was something that my best friend, when she started teaching, I got into as well and really enjoyed. Anyway, I connected with Jenna through our friend Anula, and we had this conversation a couple months ago when she was in New York. She lives in Chicago. She's owned multiple Pilates studios. She's transitioned from that business to now hosting a podcast herself, and it's called Pilates Unfiltered. I'll link to it in the show notes. And we talk in this conversation about dance, about business, about transitions, about the fitness industry and body image and infertility and motherhood and non-attachment, and we cover quite a bit. I think you'll really like this episode. I hope you do. Again, it was recorded a couple months ago when she was in New York, and I'm going to get to it as quickly as possible. Thank you so much for listening, as always. If you are new to the podcast, I talk to creative people, fascinating people every single week about their lives, where they're at right now, what they're learning, how they're growing, how they're changing. And it's my favorite thing I've ever done. I started this podcast in 2013, and I hope to do it until I'm 90. Who knows what podcasting will be like then, but I hope it's still happening because I really love this. If you want to start a podcast, let me know how I can help you. I would love to help you because this has given me so much, from getting to network. I think podcasting is the new networking, which I say in this episode, I think. I've gotten to meet so many people that I maybe wouldn't have otherwise gotten to meet through the people who listen, through the people that I interview, and now I'm just rambling, so I'm going to get to the episode. But if you like it, share it with a friend, leave a review on iTunes, subscribe on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and if you want to join the Patreon community, that's a great place to support the podcast. You can donate $1 a month or more or less, I guess. You can do whatever you want, or you can support the sponsors. That's a great way to support. But really just, you being here and listening is great. Sharing it with a friend. And one more thing before we get to the episode, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much. 2 years ago today, the day I'm actually recording this, my book came out, which is also called Let It Out. Let It Out, subtitle being A Journey Through Journaling. Gabby Bernstein, who we talk a lot about in this episode, actually wrote the foreword. And it's a book, if you're new to the podcast, that is about journaling. It's 55 journaling prompts, journaling exercises, everything from about relationships or body image or organization. Anyway, it chronicles my journey journaling. Journaling has been a really helpful tool for me for self-awareness, for understanding who I am in the world. And I started to recommend it to other people and got a lot of feedback of, I'm not a writer. I wouldn't have anything to say. And that's why I wrote this book, because it's asking good questions. And I think if you ask yourself a good question, you'll get a good answer from your intuition. So if you haven't checked out the book, check it out. The link is in the show notes. You can get it at Barnes & Noble or on Amazon or wherever you buy books. At the Strand, I have signed copies, and at the Union Square Barnes & Noble, if you're in New York City, there are signed copies. Anyway, I just wanted to say that if you want to win a signed copy, I'm going to give one away. So just comment on my most recent Instagram that promotes this episode of the podcast and just tell me, why you want to read the book. And you also have to leave a review of the podcast if you want to win the book, because that would just be really nice. So make sure you leave a review of the podcast. Tell me that you left a review of the podcast and comment on my Instagram, and I will choose a winner. And stick around to the end. I'll let you know who's coming up on the show next week and the emoji for this episode. This week's episode is supported by something called Fit Fab Fun. It's a seasonal subscription box with full-size beauty, fitness, fashion, and lifestyle products. It retails for $49.99, but has a value for over $200. I don't even know how they do that, but that's amazing. And if you use the coupon code LETITOUT, that's Let It Out, you can get $10 off your first box, which you'll find at www.fitfabfun.com. I think it's a really interesting concept. It's really cool. This Fit Fab Fun box feels like Christmas 4 times a year when it comes in the mail. And the products include everything from makeup to candles, accessories, self-care products like a massage roller, travel products, beauty finds. It's really great. And you can customize the products, add on what you want each season. It's different and it's a surprise. And the thing that I really love is the membership also includes access to Fit Fab Fun TV, which has a variety of workouts and meditations that you can do anywhere. And I love that because I love to do workout videos at home. I think it's so much fun, and I really like Fit Fab Fun, and I think you guys will too. Just check it out. Again, you can get $10 off your first box by using the code LETITOUT at checkout. That's Let It Out. And the items include everything from Tarte Makeup, which is a natural makeup line I like, Juice Beauty, which you know I also really love. There's so many great things in there. It's really fun, and I think you guys will really like it. Thanks, Fit Fab Fun. Today's episode is supported by Branch Basics. It's a cleaning product line that I discovered and I love. All of their cleaning products use one multi-purpose concentrate that is diluted with water for various cleaning products, from laundry detergent to bathroom cleaner to countertop spray. The best part is that they're 100% natural and toxin and fragrance free. And you guys know how important it is to get those harmful chemicals and fragrances out of your home and out of your body, because we're constantly exposed to toxins. So if you can keep them out of your home, I think that's really great. And these cleaners are great for the environment and your home, and I just really love them. Branch Basics makes switching to natural cleaners so simple because it's literally one concentrate that replaces all of your cleaning needs. I'm saving a ton of money on cleaning products because I can just use this one single refillable concentrate for everything, which is significantly less expensive than similar single-use products. And on top of being an amazing product, the company is eco-conscious and sustainable, and they make cleaning simple and affordable, and I just love them, and I think you really will too. I love having a clean apartment, maybe to a fault, and Branch Basics makes that really easy for me. So you can get 15% off your order on Branch Basics by going to bit.ly/LIO Branch Basics and entering the code LETITOUT at checkout. We'll have that link in the show notes. It's case sensitive, but again, the code is Let It Out, all caps, the name of this podcast. Thank you, Branch Basics. Happy cleaning, guys. So I've been really liking starting the podcast lately before we get into your past and your future and all the cool things you have coming up. And we talked a little bit on the train on the way here about some things, but I really want to dive into everything. And This podcast is really tangential, long form, love letter to you, basically. But I've been liking starting it before we get to the past and future in the present. Mm-hmm. So what have you been contemplating, thinking about, learning about recently, like in the past, contemplating the past week or so that's coming up for you?
Well, right now, this is going to sound like we'll cycle back so it will make a little more sense, but this is absolutely what's up for me right now, is that I am not feeling 100% called to be teaching one-on-one clients. Now, that doesn't mean like I'm going to give them up tomorrow or anything like that, because it's a big part of my business still, but I've really been feeling like my expanded gifts, talents, interests, passion is lying in this realm of speaking. Mm-hmm. And I love it, and I think it loves me.
You're so good at it.
Thank you. And I feel like at this moment, and this is just really honestly what's up right now, is that when I go and teach my clients, I love them dearly, and they've been with me for a very long time. And in some ways, I feel like I've failed them a bit based on the fact that it's like I almost haven't been able to give them wings to fly on their own. And, you know, for some of them in their later 70s, 80s even, we're going to be together for the foreseeable future. And that's wonderful. And they're my women, and I'll never really not have them, I think. But for like the vast majority of people who have been working with me, they come to me because they get a high level of movement education. They come to me because we have a really great relationship. They know the content that I'm putting forward is always, inspired. I'm renewing things for myself. But I can't help but feel that maybe, like, when does that relationship evolve? Mm-hmm. Like, when is the graduation date? Because I also think that there's a lot of beauty that lies in them exploring movement in other realms. And what is really triggery for me is when clients say, well, you know, you're the best, though. That scares me, because that means there's a bit of a codependency relationship going on. And I know that while I might really have something that they need and be able to work with them, you know, based on our relationship, I know that there's more out there for them to discover, and I want them to take the tools that I've given them and really put them to use in the world. And I'm enticed by the space that might free up in my life to pull me more into the realm of where I feel like I'm really being of service right now. But it's an interesting transition. It makes me sad to feel that way, but at the same time I'm really excited, like, okay, I'm acknowledging this, and what does that mean for me going forward? So it's like a conflict.
Okay, so I think we need to give people some context.
Sure.
So you live in Chicago, and you're here visiting New York, doing a lot of things. So you started as a dancer. You're from the East Coast.
Yes.
And growing up, what was your relationship to movement like as a kid? What was your childhood like? You're one of 3 kids.
Yes.
Talk about all of that.
All of it. I never stopped moving. In fact, it was my early memories are of my mom going like, chill for a second. And I was always dancing, always moving outside. My brother is 4 years younger than I am, and there's a bigger gap between my sister and I. So my brother and I were very much outdoor kids, sports, climbing, anything, playing in the yard, making up creative games. And so I've always had movement as an outlet of, I think, like self-expression.
Yeah.
And so it became something that I wanted to do in terms of dancing, but also something that my mom was really excited for me to do. And I never felt pushed into anything at all. But when I became like, I think 10, 11, I started to get into, I was in a dance school that was more about cliques. And, you know, there was me, Jenna, and then there were the Jennifers. And there were like 4 or 5 of them, and they all just kind of went together. But I wasn't. I was almost like that.
Yeah, like my name, like Caitlin, Katie. There was like a million Katies, and I feel like your generation was like Jennifer.
Exactly.
Like my cousin is your age and named Jennifer.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, and it was like, but Jennifer's not my name, so it was like I kind of fit in, but I didn't, and I felt like dance during that time became something that I did, but I didn't really show my true passion for it when I was in that cliquey environment.
Yeah.
Like, I would dance more at home than I would in the studio, which didn't really make sense, but it did in a way. And then I think I was 16, and I had gone out for the basketball team so purely to please my father. Like, there was no other motivation other than to, like, do something he would be really excited about because he's a diehard sports fan. And I got on the team, and actually it was before that, but in any case, I got on the team, and he coached our team, and I played, and I never really loved basketball, but I liked being with him, and I liked doing that thing and having a little balance to the ballet. And at one point he said, honey, if you're going to be serious about something, you got to make a choice. Is it going to be basketball and ballet? And I remember, like, such an emotional choice to make. Like, do I disappoint my dad?
Yeah.
Or do I follow my heart? And I just knew that basketball wasn't doing it for me the way that dance was. And when I chose dance, that I just fully immersed myself into everything that I could get my hands on, and bought VHS tapes and watched famous ballerinas, and sat with a cassette tape player to record the music off the VCR so that I could try to like put choreography together in my living room and things like that. So I was just obsessed with it. I had a bumper sticker on my car that said I'd rather be dancing, and that became my nickname throughout high school. Any joke that came up was like, well, what are we doing now? Well, Jenna would rather be dancing, and so it was like that kind of love affair. Yeah.
What did that mean for your relationship to your body?
Initially, nothing. Well, it's kind of like, I have one particular memory of being in a show that we were doing called the Velveteen Rabbit that was based on the book. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was during the time when everybody was going through puberty, and I was very flat and non-existent in every way, shape, and form. And so there were a number of different colored unitards, and there was a white unitard, and all of the other girls had boobs and hair, and nobody could wear the white unitard, but I was the one who hadn't developed yet, so I got to be the white rabbit. So I remember initially feeling like that was different, like I'm a little different than everybody. And I don't know that I was a late bloomer or anything like that, but I do remember coming back from a summer camp, a dance camp essentially, and dressing how I had always dressed, which the style in the late 80s, early 90s was always like tight clothing. So I had like a bodysuit and jeans on, and I remember being noticed by guys at school like in a very big way because all of a sudden I had boobs. But in dance, boobs meant like bad. That meant weight, and that meant like you didn't have that presentation of your chest that I would watch on these very thin, very beautiful dancers. And I think that I developed a big question mark about my body at that time. Like, can I do this even? Because things are changing, and I have like stretch marks because I've grown, and these boobs that really aren't big, but they're there, and what am I going to do about them? And
it's jarring, the change.
Yeah, and nobody really talks you through these sorts of, being 40 now, like I've gone through other changes, and after having a baby, nobody really talks you through these changes because you almost don't notice them as they're happening. Yeah.
Gradual.
So, and I definitely developed some really poor relationship thoughts around food and eating in general, and that went on through college, but it was also a social thing. Like we would all be existing on Diet Coke and whatever else throughout the week, but not much of anything else. And then we would have like I remember we'd order steamed broccoli on the weekends from this Chinese place as like a treat. And we'd be excited because we were hungry and we would just go crazy. But interestingly enough, we wouldn't be eating a lot, but somehow beer never entered we were in college. So we couldn't drink a lot because we were in dance every single day, early morning to late night. But when things came up and nobody was concerned about calories of a beer, but yet we wouldn't let ourselves eat a lot of food ever. And at some point, I think I just got hungry. I don't want to discount anybody's journey with eating disorders or anything like that, because I definitely was in that mindset and realm. But at some point, I think I just got hungry, and I think I just said, okay, I've got to do something because I don't feel good. Yeah. My muscles don't feel good. I actually remember describing to somebody, it feels kind of like there's poison running through my veins all the time, because I would be really, really sore. And I don't know if that has anything to do with, I now know I have an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. I don't know if that was the beginning of that, or if it was the nutritional aspect, or if it's just the long hours. But I remember like that being kind of okay, I said that and nobody else said me too. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I thought everybody had poison running through their brain and veins. Like, what's going on here? This is different. So,
wow. Well, I want to get to that. So you end up focusing on dance in high school and your younger years, and then you go to college and decide that you want to study dance and you want that to be your profession?
Yeah, I didn't want to go to school. I definitely wanted to enter the profession early. I had the unique opportunity to dance with Ballet Theater of Boston while I was kind of 16, 17, 18, so I did Nutcracker and a couple other shows with them, and I was not in the company, but I was dancing with the company, if that made sense. And it was super enticing, and I got to tour, and I had a small flirtation with one of the main dancers, and that was so exciting to be noticed by, this great dancer, and I was in love with being a ballet dancer.
Yeah.
I did not have the full facility of a ballet dancer, but I cranked out whatever I could get at, and I worked really hard. And it was tough for me, but after kind of a season of auditioning and not getting anything, I had auditioned for schools as well, and I thought, okay, I'd said to my dad, if I get a job, I'm going to go for the job. But if I don't, I'll go for school. And I chose University of Hartford because their dance program was in the ballet. So Hartford Ballet, which is no longer, was in this beautiful multi-purpose building. The ballet, the opera was there, and all of our classes would be right in that art space, which was like the next best thing to being in a company.
Yeah.
So... yeah.
So you go to school, you're dancing, your relationship to your body at that time sounds like it was pretty tumultuous, and your relationship to movement is, everything dance. Then, after college you decide to dance professionally, and that's when you moved here?
Yeah, and I should say that the shift for me with my body started after I took kinesiology at school, because I had always been working with these very famous and talented people who were maybe not educated to the best of their ability in muscle anatomy and function. And so when I learned from my kinesiology teacher that a muscle did a thing, and that if I could harness the way that muscle did that thing, that I could improve something like turnout or jumping, and that there was an avenue towards making myself better without killing myself in the process, that was so provocative to me and so exciting. And I started to think, I was really pissed. I wanted everybody to know about that. I was, why am I just finding out about this now?
Yeah.
Why wasn't this told to me before? And people don't know what they don't know. But in any case, that was a turning point, and I had at that point just let my ballet dream go, because I had been really shepherded more into the modern dance arena in college, and I was enjoying it. And once I let the ballet dream go, I really enjoyed it a lot more. And so I I auditioned in New York. Didn't happen for me in New York. And my thought was, I'll go to a smaller pond, so let's go to Chicago, which is not at all a smaller pond. Yeah. But, and I danced for a while in Chicago, probably a good 4 years, all over the place, different art companies that were, very artistic based. And then I did some commercial things that I'm glad there were no cell phones around, because I wore fishnets. I danced backup for Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Very cool.
At the Budweiser Christmas party in St. Louis. No lie.
God.
Yeah. I made a lot of money at
Well,
that.
I probably made fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. I shook my butt for that money. I made a lot of money at that one.
Wow.
But yeah.
Well, I think that dance, I don't have any experience in it, but I've seen the movie Frances Ha. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Oh, it's one of my favorite. Greta Gerwig. It's one of my favorite movies.
Okay.
Anyway, you should watch it.
Yeah.
It's super good. But it's such any performance, any type of being an artist and of being a freelancer even is uncertain and tumultuous and challenging mentally and then also physically, and it just had to be such a challenging time for you. So how did you handle that mentally, and when did you decide that you wanted to focus on fitness, and how did you find Pilates?
So I wasn't handling it well mentally. When you get into a competitive arena, it's hard because you're doing everything you think you should be doing. Mm-hmm. You're trying to talk to the right people. You're showing up. Some days your body works really well. Other days it doesn't. You're always kind of peeking out the window the majority of the classes I took was at Hubbard Street and Ruth Page Dance Center. So they're very, very professionally rich centers, always peeking out to see if anybody was watching. If anybody's watching, should I kick my leg a little higher this time? Can I make the jump a little better? And it was I definitely have anxiety in my life and always have, and that is when I feel like, it really started to clutch into me, almost to the point where I would self-sabotage in auditions. And I don't think I was consciously doing it, but I look back on my mindset and I would go in with this, like, I've got this, I'm doing this, I'm here and I'm present, and I'd get up and it would be my group's turn and it would just fall apart. I'd forget everything. And I think that I'm being more dramatic about it because that's how I remember it. I don't think it was that dramatic in real life, but I was getting discouraged about what exactly was going on there. And so I just thought about it and I was like, okay, well, I've got to go to where I'm being called, and luckily I had the opportunity to work with 2 great companies, and one of them brought me back here to New York to perform, and it was a great show. We were at the Joyce, and it was reviewed popularly by the New York Times, and it was the dream. And at the end of that show, we got the news that a grant hadn't gone through, so we weren't going to get paid as much as we had thought. And I couldn't pay my rent that month, and I had to call my dad. And it sucked. And I was tired of, like, wondering where the next paycheck was going to come from. I was working part-time at an animal hospital and killing myself there. And I thought maybe I'd become a vet, but I didn't have the heart for, like, the hard stuff with the animals. And I needed to know that there was going to be something else for me. I felt a little discouraged because I had this dance degree that was so rich, but it didn't apply to anything else that had a paycheck attached to it. And it felt really discouraging until I had hired a personal trainer as part of preparation for that show in New York on a credit card. And while I was working with him, he mentioned a muscle in the leg that I knew existed in the arm, and I was like, oh my God, do I know more than this guy? Like, could I do this? Because I kind of like it, but I also have some of my own ideas and my dance, career and experience with movement. I feel like maybe I could add something really rich into this thing and teach people how to do things, because that was so life-changing for me. So I went and I used the rest of the credit card. I signed up for a bodybuilding certification because it was like one of the ones that the only ones I could find where I could do a lot of the work online, and then the last part of it was going to be a 5-day engagement in Chicago. So I thought, okay, this is good. And then the gym asked me to sub a Pilates class, and I was like, no. And they said, come on, let's do it. I said, I hate Pilates. It hurts my back, hurts my neck. Every experience that I'd had with Pilates was so, like, harsh and ballistic and regimented that I just didn't, there was nothing about it I liked. There was no freedom, there was no discovery. It was just like, da-da-da-da-da-da. And even though some of that was true about lifting, at least I thought, well, you're accomplishing something when you're lifting a weight. In Pilates, I just felt like I was hurting myself. So they said, well, we really need a sub, and they kind of were like, you're doing it. And so I ran out to the bookstore. I was not trained. I have a degree that's heavily steeped with pedagogy, so I know how to teach a class well, and I know how to build a class well. And I bought, like, a popular Pilates book. And I just took those exercises and I worked through them in the class, and they loved it. And I was like, crap. And so then my manager at the health club said, we have Pilates equipment. It's in the back hall. If you want to pursue this, there's definitely a place for a Pilates teacher at this club. We haven't had one for a long time. And I thought, okay, this is a unique opportunity. And then I found a way to do my first training for Pilates, first comprehensive with the equipment. And I basically started the program from the ground up at that club.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So you start this program at this club, you build that, and then at some point you decide that you're like, I could do this better on my own, and you start your own studio. What was that experience like? And talk about that.
So I knew I had success building this program, and I definitely thought, well, I'm making a lot of money for the health club. I could do this myself. Now, for like anyone who's ever interested in opening a business with that thought process, now hindsight being 2020, I definitely did make that money. I could make that money, but what I didn't have was an accounting team, a housekeeping team, a marketing team, all of the things that were in place in the gym. Now all of that was on me in addition to doing the training. So that was kind of a realization. I know a lot of business owners go through that, where if they make that sort of like big to small transition. But it was okay. It was okay. And initially I went out and I was in a very small corner of like a multi-purpose gym where people were renting space and to train their clients, and then that it wasn't a right fit for me, and they were going to partner with me to open a studio within their space, and I just felt like I had this message of going back to the education, empowerment, like how can we take what we're learning into our lives and better ourselves in that way. And then so I kind of like found a space on Craigslist, and just I have red hair and definitely that Scottish temper, and it was after a day where somebody had said something just not great to me about Pilates. I don't even remember what it was, but they were making fun of the way I was breathing with my clients within this other gym, and I was like, that's it, I'm out, I'm doing this for myself. Cool. I found the space, I went, I wrote the check. It was a shithole, can we swear? Yes. It was a shithole, and I was like, all right, I gotta get a business loan, I gotta put this together, and that was kind of the start of the business owner journey. So.
Wow. So in between that time, you told me this story on the train, which was my favorite part of this, but you were engaged to someone else when you moved to Chicago. Mm-hmm. You end up meeting your now husband at that gym. Mm-hmm. You call off the wedding 2 weeks before the wedding. Yep. Which this could be a whole nother podcast. Right. And does this now overlap with you opening your business?
So all of that happened just before. And
wow. So was that like your Saturn return or like your big time of transition?
I mean, I feel like I get hurtled into these like crazy times of transition. Like if it's going to transition, everything's going to transition in my life always. And so I think that up until the time that I made the decision to call the wedding off, I had been living, and this would continue to be a theme throughout, I'd been living under the people-pleasing, area, and trying to do the right thing. But the right thing was in accordance with other people, their wants and needs, and not in accordance with myself, because I didn't really know what it was I wanted. I'd been so involved in dance and almost playing parts that I didn't have this development. I knew who I was as a dancer. I knew who I was as a person in this relationship. I wasn't really happy with that person. I had no idea who I was as Jenna. Zero. And after I called the wedding off and we went through the fallout of that, I mean, I moved out into an apartment on my own. I just spent some time to kind of figure out what is this? What am I going to do with my life now? And I have this talent because I had started working in the gym at that time. I had this talent and this beginning of a following. And I don't know that I would have opened a business without having had the courage to kind of stand up for what I knew was the right move, even though it was so hard to do. So hard. Yeah. So
you started this business. Are you married to your husband at this point?
No.
Okay.
So I was 30, turning 30. Yeah. And I was like, okay, my relationship with my now husband was relatively new. We weren't going to be getting married or anything anytime soon. We were we were both kind of on pace to just do the next stage of things. And I just, I had bought a condo, so that was awesome. And I was just kind of like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? Okay, here's the business. And I think that I remember thinking it was now or never. You know, like I'm going to do this now or never, and I don't want to. I had a pretty good idea that Josh, my husband, was who I was going to marry. Yeah. You know, I wasn't really questioning that, but I didn't want to get into a marriage before I had really explored the possibilities of who I was as a person, business owner, professional, because it was really important to me to have that identity. And so when I called him after I wrote this like hasty check, he was so supportive, and he was just like, I think it's great. I think it's exactly what you need to do. And the road as a business owner has been really bumpy, as everyone's is who owns a brick and mortar, but he's been really supportive throughout, and it's been, I don't think I could have gone this far without that support, you know, without him being there. And everything was going really, really well. We decided after a year we were going to try to get pregnant, and that was not going well. And that was a really, really tough struggle that went on for almost the next 3 years. IVF, IUI, a lot of like misdiagnosis in the beginning, and then...
Did you know you had Hashimoto's at this time?
I did not. I knew I had been diagnosed with hypothyroid.
Okay.
And I attributed whatever it was I was feeling to the stress of being a business owner, because as a business owner, I used to kind of gauge how successful I felt based on how much anxiety I would have that day. And I didn't know I was doing it, but I can recognize it now. Like if I had that little, then I felt like I'd done something that day, but I didn't know how to rest. And I think that all of that wrapped up into, you know, what I know to be true about the way Hashi's manifests in my body now is that anxiety completely depletes me. And then, you know, you have the adrenal fatigue that goes along with that after the fact, and it's just like it's just such a cyclical snowball effect. And I think that at that point where I was being treated for hypothyroid, which is very different than Hashimoto's, I think that the Hashi's was contributing to my infertility. And we didn't really know that at all, and wouldn't really know it until much later when I actually had it after my son was born. So, you know, good news. I ended up getting pregnant.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. He's 3.5 now. But yeah, after that, I had a solid diagnosis with Hashi's, and I was like, oh, okay, I think this is starting to all make sense. Yeah. That something was going on in my body that wasn't allowing it to do what I thought it should do. And in that time, and new motherhood, and I left on maternity leave, and a couple of my teachers that I thought were maybe going to really step up to the plate and take ownership, it just didn't happen. You know, it was almost like an exit point for them to go find other employment where it might not have been happening at my studio. Like I own the fact that I wasn't present, but also I have a little bit of I'm sad about that time in the business, because definitely I took a departure to see into a new role as a mother, and
as you should, you know, that
was... But it affected everything. And then my landlord in that business went into foreclosure, and the building was taken over by the bank, and there were tours that were regularly coming into the studio of prospective buyers that didn't want to own a Pilates studio. So I was anxious again, like, would I be kicked out at a given time? And it was right around the time where I would have renewed my lease, and the bank told me what they were going to be charging me, and it was astronomical. And it would have, before infertility, with my crazy 80-hour work week, teaching almost 50 hours a week, before that, I would have been able to handle it financially. Now it was not possible. Yeah. And so I was just kind of like, okay, I got to make a decision. And so we downsized to a smaller space. It was the best, most mature decision I've made as a business owner. We whiteboarded the whole thing out. We did the financials. We looked at what the best course of action would be, close or downsize.
Yeah.
I chose to downsize because I wasn't done being a studio owner yet.
You weren't ready.
Not even close. But in the meantime, I had really started to get curious about, like, I had been working for another company teaching their courses, and I was just starting to get curious about, like, okay, at what point do I start to contribute in terms of the content and the voice and the thoughts and ideas that I have as an educator beyond teaching someone else's work? And during the time of infertility, I was unsure if I could have a child, and it was really important to me to start to think about, like, as a mother, what kind of lessons would I want to offer a child?
Yeah.
And at that time, I wrote a children's book, and I said, okay, should I not be able to have a child, then I at least want to put this energy out in the world.
Oh.
Yeah. And so it's called Horatio Moves, and it's about my dog.
Oh my gosh.
And how he comes to the Pilates studio. It's a true story. He comes to the Pilates studio. I adopted him when I opened my first studio, and the book kind of chronicles him not knowing who he is. Aww. And feeling like he doesn't fit in with the other pups, and then he's brought into the Pilates studio, and then he learns how to move and enjoy his movement, and he discovers that his mismatched paws are really what makes him special, and then there's an invitation for kids to move at the end. So it's like one of my greatest accomplishments, and I've accomplished a lot, as you can tell from this conversation. Yeah. But this was me. This was my message.
Yeah.
In the center of the message, he found his true purpose to move from the heart, sharing joy and discovery with each body part.
Aww.
That's me. And that's what I wanted more of.
Yeah.
You know? So I started to do a little more project work. And
do you still, what is your relationship to Pilates now? Personally, do you practice?
I practice probably 3 to 4 times a week, depending on what my schedule is. A typical day for me looks like going to the studio, work day. I see 3 to 4 movement clients in person.
Okay, so you have like a reformer in that space?
I have I bought new equipment, new color, new fresh everything. Cool. So, but 1 of everything as opposed to 4 of everything, which is what I had in my other space.
So you're in this new studio and you've let go of your business. What is your favorite part of your life right now? What are you most excited about? What's next?
Yeah, what's next? I'm really excited about what's next, but I don't know what it is because I feel like I'm on simmer right now.
Yeah, this goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning.
Yeah, so I'm here in New York City. I'm an accomplished teacher. I present. I think I have my podcast, industry podcast. I'm well known, and yet to assume that you can fill classes is like, it's a big ask to go into a major metropolitan city where there's a Pilates studio on every other corner and be like, oh, I'm here and would you like to come for a workshop with me? And sure enough, I asked our mutual friend, Anula, hey, would it be okay if I came and taught a class at your studio? And she said, absolutely. And it was filled within 2 hours. And then I was approached about speaking at Athleta today, and I'm doing the podcast with you. Yeah. And it just, like, this weekend turned into this big kind of showing up, and it's been so easy, whereas if I look back on what we're talking about with my business, everything was a struggle. Everything was a struggle. And now it's becoming really easy. Yeah,
it's like that line Gabby says of, sure sign you're relying on your own strength.
Yeah.
Sure, what is it, the line? It's like from A Course in Miracles, I think, but, struggle is a sure sign you're relying on your own strength. It's kind of like when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or what's kind of aligned for you and your purpose, then, which is a lofty word to say, but it's really true, I think. Things will align and things will be easy and you'll just know intuitively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, just we're right after I did the speaking engagement, and I'm writing out pages of notes this morning just to kind of write it down one last time, because I had mentioned to you that I was having a little trouble transitioning from one thing to the next. And I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't pick the paper up once.
Right.
It was all there. I was in my flow.
Yeah.
I was in the right energy that I needed to be in. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And I'm really looking forward to following the signs. And, you know, woo-woo or not, like, I've cultivated this awareness of what's in alignment with where I need to be and where I'm being called and what just isn't.
Yeah.
So, case in point, I had put in a bunch of applications to a large Pilates conference, and they were good applications. It was a really tedious process to get them done. I know that I sent them out with the energy of like, just exasperation. Like, I can't believe I had to put this much work into doing what I know I can excel at, but blah, blah, blah. I just wasn't excited about pressing send on them, and I didn't get any of them. And also, it's the kind of venue where I wouldn't have been paid handsomely for the work that I did, because these venues just don't pay. And so I'm excited to, like, I saw it and I was like, why am I running into this brick wall over and over again? You're receiving this message that this is not where you're being called to show up. Yeah. Stop forcing it. Sit back, relax, wait to see where the call is, and understand that, like, by really acknowledging, owning my worth and these skills that I have that not everyone has, and this individual message that I've cultivated over years of struggle and heartache and rising up and surrender and growth, that I'm ready to share those things in a very definite way with teachers, but also with human beings, with women, even with men. And that is what I'm looking forward to. I just have no idea how it's going to manifest, and I think it's okay.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's totally okay.
No, I totally get that, and I'm in kind of a similar transitional phase, which we can talk about later, but it's exciting, and it's also really scary at the same time. I think moving to New York was a similar thing for me, where I was saying, you know, like, you have like a quote of like this season you're in or whatever, and during that season for me, it was, I probably saw this, like, I don't know, on a t-shirt or Instagram. It's like pretty cheesy, but somebody said to me, growth only happens when you're uncomfortable. And at the time that really resonated with me, because it felt so uncomfortable and it felt so big moving to New York City from the Midwest. But I knew it was what I was supposed to do. And then I actually had this, I can say this to you and the people listening too, this like healer woman. She's like super cool, and I was doing a session with her, and I told her that quote, and, you know, she was asking me about my life, and she was like, you're the best I've ever seen you. I was like in a new relationship that was going really well, and she's like, you're in such a great space. And I was updating her on my life and my move, and I told her, and I was like, yeah, and, you know, I'm kind of nervous about it, but I saw this quote, you know, growth only happens when you're uncomfortable, and blah, blah, blah. And she looked at me and she was like, why does it have to be uncomfortable? She's like, I get that, I see what you're saying, but you're telling the universe, I want to grow and I want it to be uncomfortable. And she was like, why don't you flip the script on that and be like, I want to grow, I want to change, I want to expand, and I want it to be filled with ease and love and serendipities and, you know, kismet happenings. And that's what it was. And I found the apartment and I got here or whatever, and it felt easy. And I think that's what we're talking about, of like, you know, going through transitions. It will be jarring because it's different, but it doesn't have to be uncomfortable unless you make it uncomfortable.
Exactly.
So I think that's just, it's good to share about this sort of thing and talk about it, because hearing other people do uncomfortable things during that time for me was so comforting for me to just be like, okay, this is different, but it's not necessarily bad.
Right, exactly. I'm laughing or smiling because a good friend of mine, I was kind of in a similar like thought process, and she said, Jenna, let it be easy, but don't be pissed off if it is. And I was like, oh, right. Because I do. Because we get addicted to struggle. You expect it to be, and we think that struggle equals worth, or struggle equals achievement. And there's a learning curve there, because certainly I struggled through my dance career. I struggled through my first relationship. I struggled to make those transitions. I struggled through business locations. I struggled through those relationships. And
you find comfort in that almost.
Yeah, well, I know I can do it.
Yeah.
But I don't need to live my life on the daily as a survivor.
Yeah.
You know, I can actually live.
Yeah.
I don't need to carry around, like, I definitely can associate with the victim persona at times, because when you are going through struggle, it's hard not to feel like it's being done to you. But as we know from the mutual work, a lot of it is being done for you,
right.
so that you can learn from it, make different choices, and realize that there is another way to do it. And now I do feel like life is going to be full of struggles, but I don't choose to see it in that really bleak way. And when something is easy, I am not going to do myself the disservice of judging it, because that is where I fall short. Like, that it's too good to be true thing, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Good needs to be true.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be any other way now.
I really,
or ever.
really like that.
Or ever.
Yeah.
Because once you've been to the other side of this, like, I don't know, you can, there's a way to logic yourself through every good thing that happened. Oh, well, everything happens for a reason, and oh, well, you got this because you did that. I feel that I'm 100% being led. I feel like I am not in charge of this. I'm just following and showing up. And
that's the best feeling, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's so much pressure off my back.
I mean, you're essentially harnessing the universe, you know, like Gabby says, expect miracles, expect good things to happen, and not to be like, and I'm not there, like, I'm still, you know, I see my lucky thing is the 222, like, and I see it, I'm like, oh my God, can you believe it? I can't believe it. It's crazy. And then I should just be like, oh yeah, of course, that's right, you know, like, and it's still like, I still am shocked and happy, and but I choose to walk. It's a better way for me to walk through the world believing that everything has meaning, and that everything is connected, and that I'm aligned with something greater than me, is just a better way. People can believe whatever they want to believe, and I think that that's great. And it's just, for me, this works. And going back to what I was saying before about having, you know, especially in these times of transition and change, like, you need it more than ever. And someone who's really good at harnessing that energy is, you know, a Gabby Bernstein, and a million successful people are really good at harnessing that energy. Things line up for them. Things seem easy. And I think we block ourselves, or I'll speak for myself. I block myself, and I'm like, I'm just not getting it. Nothing's working out. I'm stuck. Like, it's like, well, because of my thinking. The only reason I'm stuck is because of my thinking. And if I change my thinking, I can change my actions, and I can change my reality of my life.
Exactly.
And working backwards and making that shift. So I was saying before, you know, I have like a quote for the time of my life that I'm in, and that one was like kind of silly because it didn't end up working out, but it was, I needed to reframe that the language in that. But one that I was doing a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and someone told me this quote. It's not her quote, but I don't know where she got it, but she was like, when you make space, the universe fills it. And right now, what the transition that I've kind of been in, it sounds like you're kind of in a similar space, is like when you said simmering. I feel like that too, of like, I lack that clarity of exactly what it is, but I'm not going to get the clarity until I give the universe the space to fill what the next thing is. I need the white space, and I've been craving white space to simmer, and it sounds like you're kind of in that transition now too, which I think is a scary but really exciting, beautiful place to be.
Well, and it lets you release those definite assumptions that you had over how you thought things might be, which I think for me, those assumptions usually hold me back. So I find myself in cycles of the greatest hits of my like bad cycles are overbooking, especially in my studio space, and not believing that less can equal more, but feeling like my output has to equal my input, so to speak, especially financially. And I think that when I take a pause and I step back away from that anxiety and away from that moment of like needing to know every next step. And it's funny because I work with so many women, and they all categorize themselves as planners and maybe with control issues. And I think we all have some element of that, just natural, you know, human nature wanting to have some expectations. But what those two things, being a planner and being a controller, I really think for me it means that I'm being a resistor.
Yes.
So I'm 100% in this mode of needing to formulate things that have nothing to do with me. Like, it's not my responsibility. What's happening to me in the future is actually none of my business.
Yeah.
So I need to just stop resisting that and start being open and making space, like you're saying, and really being curious more than like controlling, being curious about what the next step is or what's the next opportunity. Because when I plotted out my career, and I've hit the marks, but there's that almost like existential letdown that happens when you get something that you've been working hard for that actually it was not on your path, or it had nothing to do with you. You know, it was like it had nothing to do with you. Like, you can go get it. For you? I mean, any number of things. And to be honest with you, I even went through it with my son. Like, I had to come to real terms with the fact that that I didn't make that happen, that it happened for me, because the process of infertility has so much control and so much planning involved that when I gave up is when I got pregnant. Yeah. And I got pregnant with intervention, because it's a very sensitive topic for women going through infertility.
But mentally gave up.
Oh, I mentally gave up, and I
You were okay with either way.
I was ready to take a break, and I was sad.
Yeah, you let go of the clenching, and
I did.
It's all non-attachment. Like, that's how you manifest anything.
Exactly.
It's non-attachment.
And that boy, on paper, should not be in this world, but he is in a big old way. You know, he's there in a huge way, and it's the greatest lesson that I have.
And that's such a great lesson of non-attachment, of like anything I've wanted in my life, I've gotten when I've let go of my attachment to wanting it. You know, like I remember I got my book deal at Hay House, which was like something I really wanted, and then I totally like gave up. It's like this like long story. And I remember like telling Gabby and asking her to write the foreword, and I told her that story, and she's like, oh yeah, that's why you got it, because you like didn't care and you weren't attached to it. Like that's why you got it. Yeah. Right. So, and even, like, I kind of had the same thing with moving to, or actually with the book, that was, like, a huge thing. Like, I remember April 5th, 2016, that was the publishing day. And I had this, like, big book party here at Ginger Snap, and it was, like, this big thing, and everyone came, and I remember thinking, like, the next day everything's going to change, and I'm going to be a star. And, like, you know what happened when you see your book at Barnes & Noble? Nothing. Literally nothing.
I literally said the same thing about my business. I sold my business and no one cared. Yeah. And it was not different. Yeah. And it's like all of this lead up to this big thing. Yeah. When what if it was just like, of course I'm going to publish a book. Yep. Did that. Now I'm going to do the other thing.
And these things that like we think will fulfill us don't fulfill it. Like even moving to New York, like that was something I'd wanted to do forever, and I did it, and I'm here, and it's amazing. And that's kind of different because I still have moments where I'm like, oh my God, I live here, I can't believe it. Yeah. But I finally felt like unattached to, I really was loving where I was. I was in this new relationship. I loved living in Detroit. I had all these things, and then finally like it became clear that I could just come here and do this. And it was hard because I really loved where I was so much. It's like if you want to change, you have to kind of love where you are, and instead of, you know, wanting to get out, with leaving a job or with wanting something. I think it's about loving and being grateful where you are so you can change the situation. That's what it goes back to non-attachment. It's like that's how I believe the universe is something we can communicate with and have a relationship with, and that's how of like showing gratitude for what we do have to make space, to create the space for what we want.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I had to learn the difference between non-attachment and detachment. So like detachment being like, I don't care, like whatever happens, happens, but really like almost having a negative thing attached to it. Like detachment is like mute. It's like sedate. It doesn't have any energy to it. Yeah. Whereas non-attachment is, I'm open to the possibilities regardless of the outcome. Detachment is like not caring at all and just like throwing away and almost being like, I don't know, almost. And back to the story, like I remember after our first failed IVF attempt. I remember I sat out on our deck, and it was a thunderstorm, and I was drinking a bottle of wine, no glass, and I looked up at the sky and I was like, you can't do anything else to me, bring it, you know? And it was like, that was a complete detachment. That was not faith. It was not non-attachment. And it was followed by like a pretty dark time that like was not going well. And I look back on that and I realized that, you know, spiritually where I was off was that I forgot what my dream was. And I always said my dream was to become a parent, and it didn't matter how I got there. And my dream was not to stay on the infertility cycle for the rest of however long, because I knew I wouldn't survive it. So I thought, I forgot that it was to be lucky enough to become a parent.
Yeah.
And when I practiced non-attachment, when I was like, you know what, let's give it one more shot. We were supposed to move on to donor eggs or surrogacy or whatever. Mm-hmm. Let's give it one more shot. Would you be willing, I said to my doctor, to give it one more shot? I said, yeah, let's do it. Everything was bad that whole cycle. We got one embryo. I was like, well, the chances have never been lower, and I guess I'm just going to be ready. We'll go through with it, and I'm going to be ready to see what happens.
Yeah.
After, and I'll give myself a break.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that was the one.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a stark difference, but
big. What has being a mother taught you, and how? Yeah.
Oh, so many things. Like fierce love. Like, I love him so much it makes me angry sometimes, because I didn't know someone else could have that sort of power over me, and also like hold a mirror up to the best and the worst parts of myself.
Yeah.
You know, like the most creative, the most loving parts, and also the parts that I struggle with, like patience and worry and anxiety. He's taught me to see the world differently. There's just this unique time with all babies, I think, when they start to talk and they start to notice things, and they're the most just basic things, but they're looking at them for the first time, literally, with their eyes, and then that makes you look with your eyes for the first time, and that's magic. And it's just like, and he is funny, and he is a master negotiator. And he'll be like, he pulls terms in that were never on the table for negotiations. He's just like, and in fact, true story. So the other night I was saying, okay, we have to take a break and eat dinner, which means you need to put your pasty away for now, and then we're going to have a nice dinner together. And he said, no, Mama, first Baba, then ice cream, then play, then dinner. And I was like, well, some of these terms weren't on there. So I was writing a contract for an upcoming event that I have, and I was like, no. First this, then this, then this, then this. Thanks, Jackson. I'm going to throw in some terms that don't even exist. Because if my 3-year-old can do it, then why am I not doing that for myself?
Yeah.
Why am I not saying what I want?
So much that he could teach you.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Every day.
That's so cool.
It does help to have a little space away from him sometimes to really remember those lessons, though.
I bet.
Yeah.
Well, in the second act of the podcast, I usually talk about the things that I ask everyone. I want to make sure I can do that with you.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a nice transition. We talk a lot about body image on this podcast, and so in working in the fitness industry for so many years, and being a dancer, and being a mother, where are you with body image now? What is your relationship with your body now, and how has that grown and changed and transitioned? I usually frame this question as, if you're having a bad body image moment, you know, you felt fine in the morning, you get a weird look at yourself in a photo or in a mirror, how do you shift out of that and not let it become a bad body image day or week? You know, where are you with that now?
Yeah, I mean, your stuff is always going to be your stuff. You know, it's very difficult to just completely erase thoughts that you've had, especially with a very, you know, a history with body and body as identity.
Yeah.
And that's been me for so long, and to a very small degree it still is. So when I struggle, it usually comes from comparison. in which I have to remind myself that, I'm a very old soul, but I have a very young heart. And so I kind of will compare myself to people who are, 15 years younger than me and go, wait a second. Let's remember that who you are is more than what you look like. Yeah. And let's also remember that what your body does for you. So my body has been there through thick and thin and has sustained and survived every bit of abuse that I've given it, and has always shown up, sometimes for more, but most times just shown up. Like, she's always there, and she's always going to be there, So I think of that kind of archetype of having this support system, which is literally me, literally everything that works inside of me. And that's bigger than a dimple or a roll or a loose piece of skin or saggy boobs or whatever it is. And I have to be honest, like, I don't really align with the whole my body produced a baby, so like I love every inch of. I'm not there yet. Yeah. I'm not quite there yet, because I've had a lot of postpartum issues, pain and things like that. But where I am at is that when I think about, one of the things that Gabby says is that we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spirits having a human experience. That's what sucks me out of that spiral of poor body image. I know that my body is capable. I have a high value for a deep squat to get down on the ground and back up. I know that I also have to listen to her, because she is not always willing to go down the roads that we went down when we were 20. And that when I do listen to her, she shows up double time. Yeah. And that's awesome. So, and I've really been interested lately in thinking about, like, what are the other ways that I can nourish myself beyond just physically? Like, how is my nutrition affecting my brain function? Because I've worked with people who have had spinal cord injuries, and like when part of your body, your physical body, isn't working, then it's kind of like a non-issue anymore. It's just like, I've got to work with what I have. So I've been kind of looking and say, okay, well, how am I nourishing this organ, the organ of my skin or my heart or my liver or my brain or something like that? And making it more multifaceted, I think, keeps me interested. And it's just like, it's the body image stuff for me. It's just such old baggage, and I recognize it. Some days it's harder than others, but a lot of times it's like, I mean, it helps being with my my younger sister and being compared to, wondering if we're around the same age. Yeah. That doesn't hurt, but, if it's just...
You look like you're 20.
I'll take it, man. I will take it. I am not 20, but I'll take it.
Well, I think something interesting to talk to you about in particular is the fact that the fitness industry is growing, and there's so much happening, and that's fantastic, and the diet industry, unfortunately, is growing, and there's a lot of overlap there, and there's a lot of dysfunction, I think. And as someone who's a fitness professional, and from what I see with Pilates, it's one of the methods of fitness with the most talking. And so how do you other things are like, there's music the whole time, so there's not really like people talking to each other almost, and like saying things about their bodies and comments. Like, how do you handle that, and what advice would you have to other fitness instructors or other people with body image and, being, I don't want to say body positive, but being inclusive and like not making people feel like they need to change, I guess?
I think we have to focus on feeling and meaning over look and aesthetic, which is hard. But the truth of the matter is that when you can infuse a sense of feeling or meaning, you tap into an emotional response that automatically helps a person appreciate everything about themselves. Yeah. When you're feeling happy, you are so much less likely to beat yourself up, which is really what a bad body image day is about. And that might be simplifying a little bit, because I know that like some of the body image issues that come up are very deep-seated, and they have a lot more to do with, family beliefs and how movement or body image is valued, the way that food is available, what kind of dietary engagement you've had, and what value on nutrition you've had as you're growing up. And there's a lot of different facets. But I do think that, like, teachers of fitness, instructors, teachers, what have you, trainers, we need to be we need to honor what we know and teach that, and not share anecdotal information with people in the realm of nutrition, because I do believe that there is a lot of information out there, but a person's nutrition is individualized to their needs, wants, and body functions.
Exactly.
And so when we try to slap on a diet on somebody that we see has worked for somebody else, like all of the BS about whatever diet that whoever Hollywood is doing, or this new trend, or what have you, it's like, you need to make sure that that stuff is individualized for your client, and that you have the knowledge to understand how it's going to affect them internally, externally, with any medications they might be taking, their lifestyle, energetically,
their mental health,
all of it.
Yeah, their relationships.
Yes.
Because food is not just fuel, it's connection and love and nourishment, and to
it
deny
can be discouraging.
us. Yeah, that's so well said and needed. And
thank you.
Yeah,
it's I don't like having pet peeves, because that puts me in like this place of judgment, but I'm really sad is what it is. I'm really sad when I hear a person suggesting something to somebody who either hasn't asked for it, or is in a really, like, when someone is asking for help with diet, with their body, movement, they're in a place of despair to a point. They're in a place of desperation. And what they really need is a loving energy that says, how can I support you? And let's work together to find the best route for you, and not a meal plan that's developed by somebody who has different protein needs than
is
than
definitely restrictive, probably.
Yeah, I mean, we know what happens calorically, but what happens to your spirit? You restrict your nutrients, you restrict everything. Your spirit. I mean, hunger is not a virtue. Yes. Oh my God, all of that is so important and needed, and and the other thing too, like that I still find, I don't want to say triggering, but jarring, is some of the terrible language in fitness classes, not just Pilates, but everything from yoga to bar to whatever. I like going to fitness classes. I work from home, so I like getting out of the house and going to do things, and it's fun. And your talk was so great talking about this. It lifts me up, and I feel like I can do my day, and it's wonderful. However, there are some, I'll use the word pet peeves, I don't like that either, but things that make me really sad, like to use your language, when people say things like, I almost don't want to say this on the podcast, but I was in one the other day, and this is like the worst of the worst, when they say, earn your brunch. Yeah, screw you.
Like,
sorry.
Yeah, it's just like,
no.
Everyone can have, and it would get so caught in my head when I was younger, of like, well, today I'm having brunch, and I didn't do the workout before the brunch. And it's like, no, it's fine.
So
like,
you're just you're consistently on a cycle of punishing or like avoiding punishment.
When I hear that, I'm just like, my boyfriend had never done spinning before, and he came to a spinning class with me here in New York. I was like, oh, it'll be so fun. We'll just like funny thing together. It's like bowling. You get the shoes and we had the worst instructor. Like, this man was so, and like,
yes,
God bless, like whatever, like he's on his own path, whatever. But he just was so saying and it was a dude, so he was very restrictive, had no, like, I really resonate more with female teachers. It's just how I need nurturing, and I need someone to like say my name and tell me I'm doing a good job every 2 minutes, and like tell me I'm okay and notice me, and he was just so like push really, really hard, very harsh, very like almost very, very mean, and some people respond well to that. I don't at all. And everything was about food and aesthetics. He talked about food more than like any other fitness class I've ever been to, and I just kept looking at Nick and being like, it's not I'm sorry. Like, he was like, well, no wonder you, like, why are you, like, and I was like, no, I swear it's not like that. But it's just, it's really sad. It's
sad. And I think it's all, like, ego crisis, because, what, like, what is the most attractive thing to the ego to cut down? What's right in the mirror, right?
Yeah.
And what makes someone feel like they are more than or more worthy is when they have that piece of information that they can hold over somebody's head.
Yeah.
So I don't like that aspect of it, where I'm going to pretend like I have the keys to your life's happiness in a recipe or a smoothie, shake or whatever it is. That is in the role of a fitness professional, in my opinion, is to be a facilitator to a next stage of development, of growth, of perspective. That's our job. Show people what's possible, shepherd them through the way, send them out on their own, feeling like they can do it themselves. Mm-hmm. What we get a lot of times is use abusive language that triggers them into a submissive state, so they'll keep coming back. And that's how memberships are sold. I mean, unfortunately, but we're really ready to change the paradigm. When I say we, I mean a lot of fitness professionals. We're ready to abandon the old. It's not ever going to go away because it still makes money, and that's the name of the game in fitness, honestly. Like, fitness is not about wellness. That's a whole other industry. Fitness is about making money through sweat. Look, there's got to be a stat somewhere, but I remember in the industry, the health clubs make more money off of unused memberships than they do off of memberships that are used, because it costs them less money because people don't use the amenities. Right. That's the key. And it's not everybody's intention across the board to be buying in. I think that many fitness professionals get into it because they truly want to help people. And some people, they just parrot what they've been taught. And if they've been abused in that way, or they've been shamed in that way, they just do that because they think that's the way they're going. And hopefully they'll be enlightened at some point to another way. I know I've done it too, based on being a new teacher and having voices in my head from my teachers. But for me, it was like, there was one point where I was like, oh, that's not my baggage. That's your baggage. Yeah. Why am I carrying that around? Yeah. And I think that that's where a lot of us who are kind of in this new generation where, especially in the Pilates world, where we're not in the space of like, we've done the education. We're not like the pioneers of the education, but now we're the pioneers of the next stage of the education. And we're done with the old models. We're done with like the one size fits all. We're done with the cookie cutter things. We're done with rules, especially. We're all like, fuck the rules, 100%, because we know that they don't apply to everyone. And we know that we have to show up and have presence and say, okay, what's going on in this room? Let me take a temperature of the room. Okay, does my class plan today fit this room? Oh, it absolutely doesn't. What else do I have at my disposal? Let me do that, because my main concern is giving these people an experience that they deserve, that will serve them beyond the hour that they're with me. That's where we're going, I believe. Maybe in a small way, but hopefully it'll have a ripple.
I mean, it's like the diet industry, too. It's like they thrive off of repeat customers, of people like, it's just this whole, it's a scam. It's just all, it's a scam. And I think that's why the work that, the conversation we're having right now, and the work that you're doing is so important and needed, speaking of this exact thing of educating educators and fitness professionals, which is what you do in your work and with your podcast. So how did you decide to start your podcast and tell people about your podcast?
So it was so funny. I have always been a huge fan of podcasts. I've always loved talk radio, and I think that actually goes back to my dad a lot too, like having talk radio on in the car. And I thought it was a really beautiful, unique way to share my voice in an industry where I wasn't finding the avenue. Like when I was presenting work, I was presenting Pilates, so I wasn't presenting my thoughts about Pilates necessarily. Maybe they'd sneak in, but I knew that there was a need for the conversations that were happening behind studio doors to come out in the open, because it felt like there were a lot of tiny islands that felt like they had individualized problems, when in reality it's an industry with a lot of people with the same types of problems. And simply by acknowledging that that's happening, a lot of times people will just say, oh, I thought it was just me. The problem doesn't seem so big let me find a better solution for it. Yeah. So when I first wanted to start the podcast, I actually went to Michigan, as a matter of fact, and I rented like an Airbnb with my dog, and for 3 days I sat there and started to try to record stuff, and I had nothing to say. I was like, and I would just, it was a miserable failure. I had zero to say, and I wasn't ready. And I still wanted to do it. So then later, maybe about 3 or 4 years later, I was talking with a couple of people in marketing and people who were doing online social media. And I was like, I want to start a podcast. Do you have any advice? And every single one of them said, don't do it. And I said, what do you mean don't do it? And they're like, well, it doesn't pay anything. It's a time suck. You'll find yourself, it's a nice idea and it might be fun for a little while, but like, don't do it. And so I didn't do it for a little while longer, and then I just finally came into my assistant one day and I'm like, we're doing a fucking podcast. I don't really care anymore. I have these things. Yeah. They're now infiltrating into my client sessions for a great conversation, but these aren't the people they already know what my thoughts are. Yeah. They don't need to be having these conversations. I need to be having them with professionals so we can start what I refer to on my podcast as a revolution. And it's less of an anarchy-driven revolution, but it's more about like revolutionize the way we think about what we do and the way we think about our role within what we do, because there is a lot that isn't serving us based on old paradigms and baggage and all of it. Yeah. So now, we just put it out, and I said it's Pilates. It's a podcast for Pilates people by Pilates people. And it started to really like slowly spread. I've been very particular about having a spectrum of guests who are very well known to unknown. So we have a lot of different voices in the industry. I've been cultivating my voice, doing short kind of producer's notes at the beginning, and within them lie either like a teaching lesson. More often than not, it's more like a spiritual lesson, things that we've been talking about here today, of how to think of things differently and how to approach different situations. So they get a gem of knowledge or thought every week. Yeah. I thought after our first season, we're going to sponsor this. There are plenty of businesses looking for exposure, and we're getting some good numbers. And so we got sponsors, and we're fully sponsored for 4 seasons. And then we just got handpicked by Spotify to be on their platform. And we're the only Pilates podcast there because there are only 3, I think, unless I'm not. But also because I've been really driven that this is a vehicle to share my message. Yeah. And I thought maybe initially it would help get my voice out there to help fill courses or what have you. And it's a benefit, but I never imagined the power of connection that it would have. Oh my God.
I always say podcasting is the new networking.
It is absolutely the truth. I have so many more relationships that are trusting relationships because we have conversations like this. And like, it's a Pilates podcast, but we rarely talk about Pilates. It's really a teacher's business person's, cool. Personal development show. Yeah. And there's some Pilates talk in there, but it's there for the support. These people who are teaching out in like small towns and they don't have the availability to go into a city or a big conference, they get some of that stuff through the podcast and they appreciate it. And they hear that, it's not just me that's feeling this way. Yes. And then for me, this is my contribution in keeping the Pilates industry going from a support standpoint, because we can continue to train teachers, but if they feel unfulfilled or lost or uncertain about who they are or what they're allowed to say or how they take their work into different communities, if they don't know the answers or don't know how to have the conversations to find them, then that's it. The industry will implode at some point. So I really feel that like I am doing a service for myself in cultivating my own voice and for the industry and giving an outlet for people to have conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so important. And I love the medium so much because of that exact piece of connection and making people feel less alone. It's such an intimate medium that we've been talking for like 2 hours and people are still listening and we're with them as they're doing these intimate parts of their days. And I think that's really beautiful and I love it.
Same.
Okay, so I want to ask you all of the questions that I normally do, but we've been talking forever. So I'm going to do these as quick fire. Okay. So I'll warn you, they start off easier, warm you up, and then they get challenging.
Okay.
So just,
and like one or two word answers, kind of.
Whatever you feel. It won't be 1 or 2 words.
Okay, just not tangential.
Yeah, no, you can be. It's just when I'm in no hurry, but I also don't want to like keep you till your flight tomorrow. So okay, favorite color.
Oh, this one. What is that? Orange?
Yeah,
it's like a
beautiful.
coral.
It looks so good on you.
Thank you.
Favorite day of the week.
Monday.
Favorite hour of the day.
3:00.
Best thing you've eaten in the last week.
Gluten-free pizza.
Greatest lesson on relationships.
It's like never make an assumption. Like really keep yourself open to possibilities and talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Greatest lesson on motherhood.
A deep breath goes a long, long way. Yeah.
Greatest lesson on entrepreneurship.
Ask lots of questions, always.
Greatest lesson on spirituality, God, what do you think happens when we die, all of that.
Make it fit you.
Yeah.
Yeah.